For those who don't know me, my name is Dave Slates. Again, I am the third stringer in this group. It's usually Mike or Chris. But being third string is not always bad. It was a third string quarterback that took Ohio State University to the national championship. You can boo all you want. I got the mic. I want to thank everyone for coming this morning. I hope you all enjoyed the breakfast. And if you did, let's give them a rousing applause for the great job that they did today. You know, last week I was in a Wendy's, and there was an old couple that came in, and they were sitting at a table next to me. And everyone started watching because the gentleman, they ordered one burger, one set of fries, and one drink. And the gentleman was sitting there, and he's very carefully cutting that burger in half. And he puts it on one half on a napkin and slides it over to his wife. Then he sits there and he counts out all the fries one by one to make them equal and slides that over. And then the Coke, he sat in between them. So, you know, we think that the young people today don't have any, they're just not like we used to be. They're just not as kind and whatever. But there was a young man sitting at another table. He walked up to that couple and he said, "Excuse me, but could I buy you another burger and another fry and some pop?" The man says, No, we're okay, we share everything. So he continues to eat, and she just sits there. Her food's in front of her, but she's not doing anything. So time goes on, and this guy gets up again, and he walks over and he says, "Really, sir, could I buy you another burger and some fries and a Coke?" "No, thank you. We share everything." So the guy continues to eat, and the lady continues to sit there. And everybody in the restaurant is looking at him, and they're kind of whispering and saying, "What in the world is going on?" So the guy gets finished, and the lady is still sitting there. So this young man gets up again, walks over and says, "Ma'am, why are you not eating?" She says, "I'm waiting for the teeth." Hopefully no one here had to do that this morning. Just a reminder, please support the retiree-friendly dealers. You can find them on the NCR website, NCRO website. It's www.ncro.org. So don't forget to, they help support our organization, so we should support them. Let me make sure I can get this thing to work. Cool. The agenda for today includes John Glotzbach. He's going to take us through an update on the pension plans. I'm sure everyone is anxious to hear that. Following John will be our president, Jay Cooney, with news and information about the NCRO. And our featured speaker today, who is an independent communications and government affairs consultant specializing in crisis management, reputation management, brand rehabilitation, product launch, and automotive issues, is Jason Vines. Prior, he did work for Chrysler, so maybe most of you or a lot of you know him. We will follow that with questions and answers and hope to finish by around noon. And then from 12:15 to 1 o'clock, Jason will be signing books out front. The next breakfast meeting is April 15. We can all remember that because that's the same day that the government knocks at the door of your house. 10 o'clock right here at the San Marino. And our featured speaker is Bill Catterite from the NRLN network. So we hope you all sign up for that one. And now let's welcome John. John?
We used our first string quarterback. But boy, at third string, I mean, my God, who's their fourth string? Is he as good? Anyway, trying to show a little bit of what's going on with the pensions, because, quite frankly, we recently got some kind of a mailing about summary annual reports, and doesn't even have pensions in there anymore. And we get these annual funding notices, and you know, they're not worth the paper they're printed on. It's not the company's fault. They're just putting out what our friends in Washington tell them to put out. So we look at the audited financial reports that the plans put out under accepted accounting policies, and not the AFNs, which are put out sort of a political statement. The government actually last year, if anybody remembers, the Highway Trust Fund bill, the Highway Trust Fund was short money because, you know, they haven't increased the gas tax in years. So they were short. So how did they cover the gap last year? Well, there's a minimum funding requirement in the pension plans, and a lot of that's based on the discount rate that they use to value the liabilities. And so what the government decided was, well, you know, a way we can get more tax revenue is we can raise the discount rate that they can use by some convoluted methodology, and therefore companies can get by with putting less money in the pension plans, they have lesser tax deduction, so they pay more money into the government for taxes, but in the long run, the companies, in the short run, they're saving money because they're, you know, if they save $100 million, they pay $40 million in taxes, so there's $60 million more in the coffers. So the government pays for the Highway Trust Fund by letting companies put less money into our pension plans. So they use that same methodology by undervaluing the liabilities in those annual funding notices. So now they're, again, and those reports are sent out by the plans, paid for by the plans, our money, to send out stuff that's basically not only not worth much, it's probably telling the wrong story. So anyway, we're going to try to show what's actually in there under general accounting principles and not colored by political things going on in Washington. Where are we? Oh, want to do the next one? Do I have a clicker, or what do I push?
The side to the right.
Is that button there?
Yeah, just push to the right side.
Not just the button, the right side of the button. It's like my wife's iPad. Okay, this schedule shows what we call the ERISA funding status, or the annual report funded status. What we're trying to show here is what's happened since 2007. You know, there's a big hit taken in 2008. There was a little recession that occurred. But we started out with our plans in total 127% funded. That sounded pretty good, right? A year later, we were 95% funded. Whammo! And then we went down to 91, 85, 75. Last year, a lot, because the discount rate, you can see the discount rate kept going down from 6.25% to 4% in 2012, ticked up a little bit in 2013, so we're a little bit better funded. But that was the market, in the, you know, a higher discount rate values the liabilities a little bit less. So we're still decent, but we're not really great. In that time period, well, each year the plans pay out $538 million for benefits. So we got a big cash drain going out there. And the minimum funding credit balance, this is important because the plans, there's a formula to determine how much money a plan is required to put in every year. But back in the day, I remember when we were working, Steve Miller had this big program to fund our pension plans. So we were putting in every dime we could and get a tax deduction. So we really overfunded the plans. So we still have credits from those good days of $500 million that we can use those against the future funding requirements. So don't expect Chrysler to be pouring money in anytime soon to help better fund these plans. Go ahead. Whoops. Hey, I got this. The left side of the button takes it back. Okay, that was the three salaried pension plans together. There's a Chrysler pension plan, excuse me for saying Chrysler, I'm never going to get FCA USA LLC. And don't hold your breath for our organization changing this name either. So anyway, just briefly, this shows that particular plan, which is a flat rate plan, union type plan, and that plan also went from 118 down to 69 and back up to 76%. That plan, strangely enough, has only got about $32 million of surplus in the funding standard, but it's paying out $229 million a year. So they may have to pony up a little bit there soon. Sir, most people in here are not only in that plan, but in the Chrysler SERP. The senior people were in the East SERP. Anyway, the SERP is also went from 132% down to 87, then back up to 89. That plan has a $241 million surplus in the minimum funding requirement, and so obviously we're not going to need to put money into that anytime soon. Thing you have to remember about these credit balances is everything I show you is what's public. We don't get squat from Chrysler that's not public. We talk to them and they get back to us, well, can't tell you. So anyway, those are as of January 1, 2013. Where are we? We're 2 years later, right? So, things happen since then and we don't have anything. I get these on a government website where they have to file their annual reports. This is ESERP. This is the senior people that are in that plan. That was also, that was 137% funded and is now is 93%. Again, all these plans are down about 44% in funding. This one has $327 million as a 1/113 in credit balances. Okay, this is the eye test one. This kind of shows you why did we drop? What happens? What's the activity that drives the change in the funding from the end of 2007 to the end of 2013? And in their company contributions, that whole period, you were talking about $1 billion pension plans, they put in $156 million, and $125 million of that was into the Chrysler SERP, accrued in 2013, paid in 2014. And again, I asked them, well, did you put that in because of minimum funding requirements? And they took about 2 weeks to come back with an answer that, well, that was in accordance with our funding policy, whatever that means. So anyway, not much money going in, right? And obviously lots of money going out for benefit payments. When we talk about the discount rate change, we saw what happened with 6 1/4, went down to 4, is now 4.7. The discount rate has increased the liabilities over that period of time by $700 million net. So That's a big driver in why the plans aren't as well funded. And everybody knows what discount rate is. It's how you time value money on valuing those liabilities that are going to be paid out over the years. What else do we have that's in the value? Actuarial assumptions. They assume you're going to retire at a certain time. They assume that you're going to live a certain period of time and draw benefits. And over time, as we live longer, and they say, well, I guess we have to change our assumptions on this. When the people retire, change their assumptions when they're going to, how long they're going to live. They have to change the assumptions, and it's always going longer lifespan, so we got to increase the assumption, and we, over that period of time, they've got another $550 million of liabilities that are created from that. So that's another driver in what's causing us to have a less well-funded plan. Okay, what is our risk? I mean, really, if the plan is going, we don't have a lot of risk as long as Chrysler's healthy and everything like that. So risk occurs really on plan termination. We dodged a bullet, let me tell you, when Chrysler was in bankruptcy. And when this organization went to Washington with its bankruptcy attorney, and Chrysler was literally ready to cut us loose to the PBGC because they were taking care of the UAW, and in the fine print, we weren't taking care of. The people that we had there were able to get the, talk to the judge and everything, and so the company said, oh, that was an oversight. So instead of being dumped to the PBGC, we were taken over by the new company, and except for some losses in the non-qualified plan, we're sailing along without losing any benefits. So anyway, the risk, in my mind, the only risk we have is what happens in bankruptcy. The company's healthy and everything sails along. So if the PBGC takes over, it takes over generally in bankruptcy when a new company doesn't take over the old plans. PBGC can also, in theory, look at a company's plans and say, look, they're driving this plan into the ditch, and all we're going to do is create more liabilities for us in the end, so we're going to terminate the plans. That's pretty rare because they don't want to take on the liabilities. So again, the best safeguard for our benefits is a healthy, profitable Chrysler, so we ought to all continue to support the company, as difficult as it is sometimes. Again, the real risk occurs at the plan termination. Now, they measure the liability not by the numbers that I showed, which is the Financial Accounting Standards Board's numbers and how you determine liabilities, et cetera. The PBGC, being a government agency, understanding, has their own way, okay? So they compute the liabilities on their own. And they use what's called more conservative assumptions. The company's plans, the plan trustees use what's AA corporate bonds to determine the liabilities, which is fairly conservative in itself. PBGC uses rates that they determine by surveying life insurance companies and what kind of rates they use in buying selling annuities. And we can all expect what happens there. They use much lower rates, which ups the liability, which makes the plan look a lot less well-funded than it really is, to the benefit of the PBGC, obviously, not the retirees. The funded status of the plan is affected by not only that kind of thing, but by deterioration of assets. Now, what happened to the assets? We lost $1 billion in the plans in 2008. And we don't think, because of various factors, we've really recouped it all yet. In fact, the increase in the liabilities over the time because of interest on liabilities, time value of money, it's really completely offset all the income that we've gotten over that whole period of time. And, of course, the lack of significant company contributions. That really hurts because there are no new accruals coming in, changes of assumptions, everything's raising the liabilities, and the company is using the credit balances and not putting any more money in. Okay, so assets went down, very little company contributions. Liabilities, what's happened there? Benefit accruals, like I say, although benefits accruals have slowed, because in the early 2000s, all new employees went into a defined contribution plan. And recently, even the grandfathered people, they stopped accruing in these defined benefit plans that we're in and stuck their future accruals in a defined contribution plan. So the benefit accruals have slowed, actually stopped now. And all these plan amendments, they have special early retirements and all the deals they cut to get people to leave, more service, whatever, those increase the liabilities. The assumption changes we talked about increase the liabilities. All this makes our plans less well-funded. Okay, terminated plans benefits liabilities are calculated, like I say, using PBGC assumptions. They allow and then, so they create this larger liability number, right, versus what a reasonable accounting system would come up with. So then they take those liabilities, they sort them down into categories. The first two categories are, what benefits were bought by employee money, either voluntary or involuntary, and those are relatively small because the company's contributions are much higher than the employees was. So that's category one. So category three is really the big category for us. Those are for people that are retired 3 or more years ago or could have retired 3 or more years ago. So that's where basically we all are, category three. So these, again, are based on benefit levels in effect 5 years ago, and again, the people who could have retired 3 years ago. And there's some other categories that most of us here don't really worry about. There are other benefits that are accrued, either vested or non-vested, but category three is the big one. Okay, so then we say, what is the security of our pensions? Because, again, number one, I don't really care too much about the funded status at any time, ever, unless the PBGC takes over and terminates the plan. So the first column here we're talking about is, as of the end of 2013, latest numbers available, how well funded is a plan according to the plan annual reports versus taking a look at how the PBGC in their own methodology, looking out for themselves, how they look at the plan's funded status. So here we're looking at the basic pension plan, which is the least well-funded of the plans. In that plan, we have total liabilities of $3.6 billion. PBGC looks at it and says, oh, using insurance company rates, it's really like $4.4 billion. So that's a little bit of a boost there. So if you look at the underfunded, the plan reports would say $868 million, and the PBGC would say, well, it's $1.6 billion. So that's important because that's how they allocate the assets, based on their liability numbers. And while I show here that the plan is 94% funded, if you only look at the retirees, which are basically category 3, since there are no new accruals, no new money coming in, all those people who are not retired are going to slip down into the total number, or into the category 3 number, because Chrysler's not going to go bankrupt tomorrow. So today's retirees versus the assets isn't as important as looking at the total numbers. So looking at the annual report, you say they're 113% funded, or I'm sorry, 76% funded. That's, not too bad, but it's 63% funded on PBGC, so there's a 14% loss in what's going to be available for retirees. The SERFs are a lot better funded than the basic pension plan. You can see there under the plan annual reports at 117% funded, and we're actually 98% funded. This is looking just at retirees. So you say 98% funded, great. Don't have to worry, go back to sleep. PBGC gets a hold of it, and that total number, I'm sorry, it's 89% funded, so it's still pretty good, but it's only 74% funded under PBGC's methodology. So that's important on how they are going to allocate assets and what percentage of your benefits you're going to get. So you're only going to get 74% instead of 89. Again, ESERP is even better, is well funded. It's 93% funded in total. But again, PBGC says 77% funded. So that's a haircut we don't think we should have to take. And one of the things we're doing, we'll talk about this later, is that we'd like in our workings with Congress and the people on the Hill is we really ought to not let PBGC feather their own nest by overvaluing the liabilities by using these insurance company rates. We ought to use the plan ERISA AA corporate bonds and give people a fair shake when the plan's terminated. Now, there's another part of this. When a plan is terminated, there's something called a minimum guarantee by the PBGC for a person. And this is age-related. In other words, if you forget the assets for a minute and you say, okay, my benefits are X, how much are they going to guarantee? Are they going to guarantee everything? So this is a case where older is much better. I mean, us older people love this schedule. Because if you're 75, and let's just take a look at the column on the right, which is you're drawing your benefit with a spouse option. Now their table shows with a 50% spouse option, and the Chrysler plan's richer, so they would tweak that down a bit to show the higher value of the benefit. But setting that aside, if you're getting $165,000 or less in spouse option, then no matter how well funded the plan is, you're going to get your benefits. If you're getting more than that, you're going to get tweaked, but a few people are getting less than that. So you can go down the table, and on that page, you can see how it drops. So on that same column, if you're 70, it's only about 90,000 instead of the 164,000. Going down to the younger people, that becomes 80,000 at 69, and at 65, it's 54,000. That's a huge drop, so you want to keep the plan going to get in the higher levels. 62 is 42,000. Remember all those people who are 55 and they say, I got a great deal for you, special early retirement. You're going to be golden. Well, 55, what are they going to be guaranteed? They're going to be guaranteed $24,000 a year. That's a hell of a cut from what a lot of people are getting and what the older people are getting. So when they give these people a special early offer and they think that they're golden, I think they need to be concerned about the future and what's going to happen to these plans. Okay, how do you look at your risk? Look at the PB. If you're older, look at that guarantee schedule because it's pretty healthy, right? So most people, they're in the first schedule there, are probably going to be pretty well set on being able to get the benefits from the PBGC no matter what the funded status of the plan is. However, if you're younger, you might want to be more concerned about how well funded the plan is. Okay, lack of transparency. One of the big problems is we go to Washington, we complain about how PBGC values the liabilities, et cetera. Well, they send out this annual funding notice. Do they tell you how well funded the plan is on a PBGC basis? Hell no. They wouldn't like that because somebody would be mad and there'd be a lot of people saying that something ought to change. So the annual funding notice that you get shows this convoluted number that was even tweaked for the Highway Trust Fund bill. It shows the plans are much, much better funded than the plan annual report show, which is, and then you go down to how well funded they're on a PBGC basis, which is a lot worse than any of the other numbers. So they're not telling the real story. The only number I care about is how well funded is the plan on a termination basis taken over by PBGC, and that's nowhere to be found, nowhere. It won't be, the government doesn't have them put it in the annual funding notices. Company won't tell you what it is. So everybody's in the dark, but that's the only number that really matters. So there's no transparency there. We ask Chrysler what their funding plans are, and you kind of get a blank stare, and they say, well, the financial people handle that. Why did you put $125 million in, which we like? Were you required to? In accordance with our funding policy. What's your funding policy? Finance people have that. And we try, like I say, we try to get information to sort of understand what's going on here from Chrysler, and we get the same kind of answers like on why did you put the money in. I think they talk to the lawyers, and lawyers say if it's not on the government website, we can't tell them anything. Potential legislation going on in Washington. We keep talking to them every year, maybe twice a year, that PBGC needs to change their ways to show realistic funding statuses on plans that are terminated. And we've talked to the PBGC, and they bring in their actuaries and everything like that. And what is their answer? Why do they do it this way? Well, I remember when Walt Simons, anybody remember Walt Simons, the treasurer? The last thing you ever want to do when you go into him was to say, when he says, why did you do it that way? Because we've always done it that way. That's what their answer is. We've always done it that way. It's not that it was good, not it was bad. We've always done it that way. So they don't want to talk, logic or anything. We have always done it that way. Annual funding notice. We talked to them in Washington, the Labor Department, et cetera. You need to put something in there that makes some sense. Don't tell us these convoluted numbers that you gerrymander around to fund the Highway Trust Fund bill. We need the PBGC funded status numbers in there. And you get the blank stares, and everybody always agrees with you, but nothing ever happens. Then there's also concern that where companies who do what Jay calls financial engineering, spin off a pension plan that's poorly funded to a company that can't afford to support it. So we need to be concerned about that. We also need to be concerned about, there was a recent bill passed, I think it might have been part of the Highway Trust Fund bill again. We're in called a single employer pension plan group, guaranteed by PBGC. They have another segment that's multi-employer plans. Those are union trusted plans that are generally trucking and construction, et cetera. Those plans are in deep doo-doo. I mean, they're in really bad shape, and the PBGC's fund for them is really bad. So Congress, in effect, is letting the plans reduce the accrued benefits. ERISA says once you've accrued a benefit, it's accrued forever. You can't cut the benefits in the plan. So they're letting them cut the benefits. Now, does that affect us? No. But, you know the old story, once you do it for him, you're opening the door for someone else. So we want to be sure and pound the table that don't bring this over to the single employer plans. Keep those benefit accruals sacrosanct like they've been since 1974 when ERISA came in.